What we're going to do is we're going to cover the back of this page with black gesso. It just makes the end of the painting or the end of the assembly process much easier. I take black gesso, I put it on roughly. I was struggling with this little brush, so always try and make sure you're using the right tool for the application. In the end, I went with a brayer, which was just so much more incredibly easy than this little brush. And if I'm honest to myself about why I was using this little brush, it was just because I was lazy to get my brayer from 10 centimeters away from me. Once the gesso's dry, we're going to turn everything right side up again, and we're going to varnish the faces. This is optional, but I do it so that my faces don't stick together in my final product, and I also think they look really cool. I'm using a thin layer of varnish, I'm working quickly, and I'm not going over one spot multiple times just because I don't want anything to reactivate. Although at this point, it doesn't reactivate because it is quite dry. If you find varnish intimidating, I hope that you'll give this a try. It makes your pieces look really cool. It just makes it look more vibrant, and again, it's a really nice protection from acrylics sticking to each other. I'm going to hand you over to Video Tamara, so the one who's speaking on the actual video recording, but you will definitely hear from me again later on in this session. My varnish has had time to dry. It is a little bit sticky in some places where it's placed too thickly, but it's dry enough for me to touch the painting a little bit and examine it. And also to show you this little bump in the mouth. I don't know if you can see that. If I press it down, it just goes in. And what that is when I was drying the black gesso at the back of the page, I had the heat gun too close to the paper and on one spot for too long, and that bubbled the paint on the other side. Luckily, I have 6 of these faces, and also it's that little mound is quite a cute look, and I wonder if maybe one day I can explore either doing a mound with paper or even just using heavy paste to do that. So I've come to the point where I'm going to take a little bit of a look at my paper and try and understand the faces that I've got going on here. And today, the state of mind that I'm in is very different compared to all the other times that I did this exercise, past and present. And I can see that by the number of almost like saddish looking faces. There are some sadder looking faces here. And I decided that I want face number 1, number 3, and number 6 in my final piece. I could definitely add all of them if I wanted to, or just one of them. And this next part is definitely up to you, and whether you even want to add these faces to a final piece. You could just keep this in your journal as an exercise and make notes on the paper. Up to you. But the reason I want these 3 is because I feel like it tells a story that's very me now. It's kind of this downcast look. It's a look that I'm familiar with, you know, like something's my fault. And then it's kind of like, wait a minute, what's going on here? And then it's this like kind of like full look in the face to say, no, I'm actually not going to take responsibility. This first downcast sad face. And of course, I have stuff that I'm going through. Your faces might be different. They might all be happy, or you might not have such a clear story. That's fine. Just choose the faces that speak the most to you. Try and imagine a narrative, or if you can't, just try and put them in a random order, shuffle them, and see what works for you. What I'm going to do is I'm going to cut out just these 3 faces. I'm going to leave the rest in because I don't want to do unnecessary cutting. And it's a simple process of cutting. It's going to be my scissors just around the face. I'm going to try and cut as close to the edge as possible. So I'm going to show you an example. Okay, just make sure the back is definitely gessoed. I'm going to cut away the white and try and keep as close as possible to the places where I do have the skin tone. And wherever it's a little bit too see-through or it's definitely not working, I'm just going to cut that away. The reason for that is I am going to have a number of faces in my final piece, and they might, even though I used a compass in the beginning, they might all be different sizes. What I would suggest when you're doing this is to try and round off some of these sharp edges. So my scissor usage leaves a lot to be desired. So that's my first piece, and you can either at this point put it over and you could draw a circle, but I really prefer freehanding them. And I also, it seems that my first face is going to be quite big, so I just want to bear that in mind. I'm going to cut the rest of these off screen, and I'm going to be right back. So I just want to maybe give a warning. I decided to cut these faces out, and the varnish was not 100% dry. It was dry enough to deal with, but it wasn't dry enough to put these on top of each other and compress them. And that's what I did. And some of the gesso over here, this needs to be painted, transferred to each other. You can still see some of the varnish on here. But luckily, because it was varnished, I could wipe it off quite easily. And I think I might actually have to revarnish some spots because I wiped that varnish off. So maybe let me learn the lesson on behalf of you. Don't stack them together or compress them until the varnish is dried. What I have done is I've placed the faces over each other, and I've tried to make sure that they fit as snugly as possible. It's not going to be 100%. You can still see faces 2 and 3 under the top one, but in general, they just fit together. And this is how my story is going to go. Once again, downwards, realization, and then don't beep with me. Beep is a swear word. Beep. So cool. I'm going to let these dry for real this time, and then we're going to come back to assembling our final project. It is time to start painting the background. I'm going to use purplish red, the color I used on the face, as well as teal, color I used in the eye. I'm going to apply it with a palette knife, and I'm going to do it in short downward strokes, not letting the paint dry. So it is put on quite thickly. In some places it will dry, in the places where it's thick, it will not. Once I've put on the purple, I'm going to add teal, and you can see that I'm putting it on in spots where I haven't touched the purplish red. Once I'm convinced that I have enough on there, I'm going to take my palette knife and start scraping the paint away. Then whatever I've scraped off, I will put in alternate blank spots. The goal at this stage is just to cover anything that's blank with either the paint or a mixture of the paint. Now that I've got my grungy, scratchy background, I'm going to draw on the onesie that the face is going to fit into. So I'm putting down my face, and you can see that it is above the halfway line or sitting on the halfway line. So the bottom of the face touches the halfway line. I just want to secure my pages down so I can draw with ease. And I'm going to make a circle around the face, and I'm going to use a Pitt pen, not a pencil. The Pitt pen, once again, is water soluble, and it also doesn't leave any harsh lines when I'm done with my painting. I'm going to draw a circle around that initial circle. You can see I'm making mistakes. It's rough line work. It's a short neck, and it is some short slouchy shoulders. And then I'm adding 2 ears, or they could be horns, on top of the head. The Pitt pen is water soluble, so you can go over your stuff, you can adjust, and you can make amendments to your drawing as you proceed. To make sure that I understand where the lines of my drawing are, I'm going to take a wet brush and I'm just going to smooth or buff out the imperfections in my drawing. I'm not going to do everything, I'm just going to do the parts where I could get confused when I paint. Once I'm done with that, I'm going to use gesso and natural sand paste to add some texture to the onesie. You can use whatever medium you want. You might want to use modeling paste, or you might want to just use straight heavy body acrylic. I really like gesso, like I'm sure like everybody. And I also really enjoy sand paste. So that's why I lean towards them. They're very cool for scratching in texture. Although I don't do that in this particular piece, you are more than welcome to actually write words into your gesso as you paint this piece. I also enjoy the paint on my fingers, so I'm using my finger to smear it on. If you don't like that, if it's not something you want to do, use your brush. If you feel that adding the texture paste or gesso just to the onesie is a little bit too finicky, you're more than welcome to add it to the entire piece. The reason why I just add it here is so that I can have more dimension on the body. We're making a moving mechanism or quite a dimensional piece, and this really adds, again, texture, dimension, interest, and it makes it look like our figure is a little bit off the page versus within it. Once you use these pastes or mediums, let them dry very well. This is a good 30 minutes later. I then take a dark turquoise color and start painting in the onesie. You can be as thorough as you like or not. It's okay if some of the white shows through. It's also okay if some of the underpainting shows through the background. When I paint the ears, I am leaving a little bit of a gap between the inside of the ear and the outside. That's just because I want that guideline when I go over it with a Pitt pen later. My paint has fully dried, and I'm now taking the teal color that I used in the background and I'm dry brushing that over the places where there's texture or sand texture. And this is going to give it a grungy look, but it's also going to look very interesting. It's going to pick up and elevate some of the places where there is texture, while the darker colors will make the parts that are not elevated recede. It's kind of like rubbing your finger over embossing. If you've ever done embossing, running a color over the raised parts and then letting the darkness shine through. I am not putting any teal inside the ears, so you can see those two dark parts of the ears, because I want that to be dark and I want it to look like it has some depth compared to the rest of the onesie. I'm now coming back with my Pitt pen, and I'm going to use it to darken the inside of the ears as well as the outline of the entire onesie. I am going to be doing this step again. It might not be necessary to do it now, but this is definitely another part of my painting that I have to do and refine as I go on with the process. So if you do like refining as you paint, this would be a great time to do it. But if you prefer doing everything at once, you might want to wait with this portion and then come back to it later. I'm now going to come in and add more darkness to the ears and also some spots around the body where I feel I need some darker contrast. I don't use black everywhere because it's quite a strong color, but I do like to use it in certain spots. And you can see the difference that it makes. I really think it does add to the piece. If you don't have a Pitt pen, you could use acrylic ink, or you could use watered down acrylics. You are now welcome to stop at this section. You can take one of your faces and just paste it to the middle, and that will be the end of the entire ordeal. But if you want to go the whole hog with me, take your faces and arrange them in the order that you want them. So 1, 2, and 3. And then we're going to settle them down onto our desk. I just want to show you, you could paste them. They look cool like that here. Just one pasted in. But again, we want to be extra. So I have my faces in order 1, 2, and 3. I'm going to take face 3 and I'm going to put it in the middle. Okay, so it's going to be 1, 3, and 2. I'm then going to take faces 1 and 3 and turn them upside down. So I want the face to be facing my desk. The reason we set them out this way is because when we fold them, they're going to be done in a certain order. I took some of the paper from earlier that had black gesso on it and I just painted the back of it. The size, which I will put in inches here, is about 7 centimeters by 2.5. It's the width and length of my finger. I'm not very accurate with this. Once you have that, you're going to fold it in half and cut it. You are going to need one more piece like this. You can decide if you want to cut it now, by all means, or you can be like me and just do it on the fly. I do want to make sure that they are kind of equal though, because while I don't want a perfect product, I do want it to look cool at the end. I'm now going to take some gel medium and I'm going to place it on the back portions of my faces. So the gel medium only touches things that are black. And I'm going to take it and put it on the first face, on the side, on the flap, on the actual piece that we cut out. And I'm going to stick the second face to that. I feel like my English is really failing me here. You do want to make sure that the faces are in order, that you don't have anything upside down. Maybe just double check at this point. It would look cool if it was, but I want it to be right side up in this instance. The only way I can stress this is that just make sure that your gel medium is only touching places that are black. So we're putting some gel medium on one edge of the tab and sticking the face down onto it, and then on the other and sticking the third face to it. I hope that the video explains this better than I could. Now, I've let that dry and I've just turned it around so you can see two faces and one face. It kind of looks like Mickey Mouse gone wrong. Fold over face number 1 over face number 3. Make sure that it's down properly. Then open it and fold over face number 2 over face number 3. It's kind of like a booklet. I don't know how else to describe it, but this is how you fold over the face. I'm showing you that the end piece is quite long and it doesn't really look flush, but it doesn't matter because I am going to paint over it. But if that bothers you, by all means, shorten the piece or paste it a little bit closer to each other. I'm now giving you permission, once again, if you need it, to decide to stop here. You could put gel medium on the back of face number 3 and stick this down to the onesie, and you would have 3 faces on one character. I would definitely prefer my faces to hinge, so that little motion that I showed you before. And before I get started on a hinge, I just want to clean up those black tabs a little bit, just so that I can have a little bit of a sense of completion about what my project would look like at the end. I am going to turn the face around. I want to stick the hinge to the back of face number 3 as well as my background. I'm using a piece of black paper from the original drawings we did. I'm not painting it on both sides. You can if you would like to. And it is not the same size as the other tabs or hinges. I'm applying gel medium to both ends of the tab, and I'm going to stick one to the background and the other to the faces that we've made, the faces that open and close. Now, I would ask that you show some patience here because it does take some time to dry, but also be slightly careful in how you align it. You want the faces to be in the middle, and you also don't want your faces to stick to the background. So after you stick it on, open it and make sure that everything's stuck down together. And this would be a good time to actually maybe use your hand dryer if you have it, and if you don't have time, to make sure that it dries properly and nothing sticks to each other. Okay, we have dryness and we are almost at the end. And again, totally optional. You have permission to stop here if you would so like. I'm going to paint the background with black gesso. You can see that I've got shininess from the gel medium on the actual black pieces that I stuck the tabs to. You can gesso over that if you want. I am going to varnish my entire piece afterwards, so I'm not really interested in doing that at the moment, but you could. The reason I'm putting gesso on here is because I want to add more to this piece. In this case, I'm going to put something onto this black portion. But for now, I'm going to let that dry. And here you can see it's after it's been some time drying. I just want to show you how it flips open and what it looks like so far. I would like to say, if you are uncomfortable with this black space and you don't want to write on it, you could stick one of your mini faces on there and it would just look, to me, it looks super cool, super meta, but I don't know, that might be too many faces for you. But that is something you can do. You can journal again on those tabs, or you can just put in another character. In this case, I'm going to put in a skull. Something I also do in some of my paintings is, if I use black gesso, I sometimes leave the face just black, which sometimes suits what's going on inside me as well. So this is the time for you to kind of use your imagination and decide what you want to do. Now, the skull is, like all my painting process, a very layered state of affairs. So I've just drawn on what I think the skull shape should be. It looks kind of like a mushroom or a light bulb.
Then I'm going to start sketching in the face using gesso. This is not something that I've really included a step-by-step for, as detailed as the face, because I think it is something that's relatively simple to do, but I am also showing you the process in real time so that you can get a grasp of it if it is not something you are comfortable with. I think a lot of people who paint feel that they need to be extremely efficient when they do. And yes, it really is nice to be an efficient painter, but I also think sometimes people mistake not using layers as being efficient. Being efficient in terms of the time you take as well as the paint that you use. I do a lot of layers because I like the look that comes up. I can only get that look by using so many layers. And I also think it gives me a lot of time to spend with my painting. And that's why I really enjoy using layers. Something always shines through from the end. I'm still playing around at this point with black gesso and white gesso. This is, for me, really a time to start playing a little bit, playing around and seeing what works and what doesn't. If I was not comfortable painting a skull, I would maybe sit down and do 6 skulls, and I would find my way and my method from there. So if that is something you're not comfortable with, you can either print out a skull if you do want to have a skull, or why don't you try the method of painting 6 skulls and see what works for you and what looks best. I think it would be really cool to try and paint the skull in some of the colors we've used in the painting. Over here, I'm just using a parchment color. You could use titanium buff. You could use Naples light, I believe. And the gesso is still wet, and that's what you can see make those dark shadows. So it hasn't dried as yet. But the reason why I'm using this color is I don't really like a full bright white skull. I like it to have some variation. And I also decided at this point that I do want more than just top teeth. And again, the idea was not solid from the start. I'm painting and changing it as I go along, which is a very exciting way to paint. What you see me doing here is very similar, again, to how I paint faces. It's just layers, dabbing here and there, and changing as I go along. I decided I didn't just want top teeth, I wanted a full skull. I wanted to see all of those pearly whites. I'm also rounding the skull a little bit. I can see myself consciously doing that because I felt that it looked a little bit too sinister. And my whole messaging behind the skull is, so if you can understand, is that like, I know that the situation that I'm journaling about or what this actually represents, I know to my bones that I'm not responsible and my boundary will not allow me to be responsible for that. So I just kind of wanted to convey that, like, I know it to my bones, and also that I'm grumpy to my bones. I've gone over, you can see this bright white color that's coming through with some titanium white. But again, I'm not putting it everywhere, and it's all in layers and drips and drabs because that's going to give me a dimensional look and feel. I'm now using a smaller brush because it's now time to detail this face or the skull with a little bit more finesse. And I'm pulling out the eye sockets. I want to have a stylized look that matches the face. I don't want it to be 2 round circles and the eyes are actually more like half semicircles. Still using the gesso, I want to redo those nose hole openings, and I'm also going to redraw the teeth. And you can see that I'm drawing, it's kind of like a pole shape or a very long stretched out oval. and that's for the teeth, and they're all going to be quite even. And once I go over them, you'll see that I wiggle my brush across the teeth line just so that it's not too straight. I am definitely going to come back over this with some parchment color. There we go. And this is just to blend in with the black of the teeth a little bit and make them look less white and less perfect, and also get rid of the harshness of those black lines. Depending on how much you like painting skulls, I like painting skulls a lot. This is either going to be very fun for you, or it might be a little bit more taxing. So once again, just do what makes you comfortable. And now I'm coming back with some white because those teeth then became too yellow for me. When you view the final product, and I think you can see it here, is that not everything's one color. These teeth are not just gesso and parchment and white. They all are a mixture of everything else. Such a fun way to paint, well, for me. I'm now lightly taking that white titanium and I'm just lightly like brushing the bottom of the eye sockets. And the reason I'm doing that is because I want to create depth in the skull. And I'm showing that there's some depth to go into the back of the eyes. And that's how I'm doing that. You could put 2 little eyeballs if you wanted. That might look cool, like 2 little white dots for some eyeballs. Interesting. I'm now using the gesso to add some dots, some texture marks onto the skull. And I'm coming back with a Tombow marker. And I have shown what it's called, and it's also in the supply list. I love this pen a little bit too much. It's a brush pen. It dries fast. You can varnish over it. You can make different size strokes. And I'm using this to put in those little lines that you see on the skull. You can definitely use a detailed brush, but I think by this point, I just wanted to move a little bit faster, and that's why I use this, but also I just love the stroke of this pen. I'm going into the teeth, making them look a little bit banged up, like mine. Maybe I should have given it a little bit of a gap. That would have looked cool. Well, it's not too late. Go and give it the teeth you feel it deserves. I'm also using this pen to kind of clean up my marks of the skull. I just would like it to be a little bit sharper. And there we go. The skull portion is almost done. And if you think we are finished, you would know that you are wrong. You could finish at this point, but I want to do something really silly and stupid. I am drawing this symbol and this kind of character, I'm going to call it a character, everywhere. And all it is an orange dot with some red at the top of it and 3 black circles for eyes. You could draw a heart, you could do something else, but I really like this orange color on this teal because it's a very nice contrasting color. So again, it's orange, 3 black circles. I'm using a Molotow acrylic marker. And you can see I've already painted the top red and I'm just showing it to you again. It's just some red paint on the orange and then 2 spots of pink. And then I'm going to do 2 tiny spots of white on the outer circles. And it becomes a face. And this, I know, is infinitely silly, probably in the greater scheme of things, but I think it draws your eye down into the onesie. And it's such a cute thing. I've put a shadow using a pit pen. It is so unnecessary, but I mean, come on. That's the beauty of life. That's the beauty of art. And there was definitely something in the tone of my voice that made you think this was over. What I would like to do at this stage is add more contrast. I really feel that the piece needs it. So I'm going to do that with the pit pen on the outer sections of the ears as well as the body. and I'm going to fluff and brush that out. I just really like the dimension, and I want the body to stand out from the background. I do want to make sure that we all understand that this is time-lapsed, this part, because I'm just adding contrast using the Pitt pens. And again, it's a back and forth process. I'm going to bring in purples, more blacks, and just smudge that out so that my character stands out from the background. I'm also bringing in some more paint because I felt that the color of the background was a little bit too gray and samey. So I wanted to kind of change that a little bit. I think there's a saying, like, a painting's never done. And that's how you might be feeling at this moment in time. But I promise you we're almost at the end here. I've decided to take a green marker and lightly outline this figure, just so that I can show kind of some backlighting. You don't have to do this. You don't have to use green. You could use orange. I just kind of liked this like smoky, cloudy look that it was giving, and also just a little bit of differentiation in the character. And I have finally finished the painting process, and that's what I'm panning out to show you. So let's get some final shots and let's get a little goodbye after what I'm sure has felt like 20 years for you. Are you still here? You made it! Yo! Let's put our hair up. And first things first. If you don't have hair, just wipe your brow. I know that was long. I hope that you still found some value in it, that you enjoyed it, and I'm so thankful that you stayed all the way to the end. I would like to pay homage, and I would like to thank my ancestors for where I am, and I would like to thank those that came before me for where I am, and I would also like to thank my teachers and mentors that have paved the way for me. I would also like to say thank you to Effie Wild for allowing me to teach on this course, and lastly, thank you to you for listening to me, allowing me to come down here and talk to you. And I really hope we stay in touch and you keep on talking to me. And I promise I won't talk as much if we talk in person. I am actually an introvert. So thank you again. I hope you enjoyed your project. I hope you enjoyed looking at my dirt on the floor and my shoe on the side. Yeah, I guess I'm just infinitely unprofessional. Please share your stuff with me and I will catch you on the flip side.